Before I get into this legendary one-of-a-kind artist's discography ranking, I do want to point you in the direction of Patreon, because this video itself was requested via Patreon, and while I have taken a bit of a while to get to it, a bit longer than I wanted to, I do make sure I get to the requests that you guys send my way via Patreon. So if you would like your own requests for worst to best or any other thing, and you just maybe want to support me with maybe even just £1 or $1 a month, I would absolutely love that. So make sure you go and check Patreon, have a look at the tier rankings, and consider supporting your favourite man. Maybe I'm not your favourite man, but we can pretend that I am. Björk is truly one of those artists at this stage, at this point in 2022, where for as long as she's been around, you've had as many opinions and as many unique ways to describe her music as you possibly can. To the point where making this video makes me kind of sit here and think, how can I describe this music in a different way to everyone else? And the answer is I probably won't. But it's always fun to talk about Björk, isn't it? She has such a unique, vast array of different sounding albums. Even among her own discography, everything sounds so unique to one another. But even when you compare it to anyone else, it's hard because she is just one of a kind. A unique vocalist that is indescribable at times, and even going as far back as the days of the Sugar Cubes, you wouldn't even find a vocalist in the world of rock music sounding like her, and yet she was there doing what she was doing in that band. And look, no one else out there is doing it, or no one else there words herself like Björk either. While it's clear that Björk has her own influences herself, she has influenced so many, even if you don't necessarily hear it in the vocals of any given art pop, experimental pop artist. You can always sense when someone is influenced by Björk. It is so easy to see, and no one else out there can do the vocals like this, but the influence she has had is pretty remarkable. And even a cultural influence. She's always been such a strange character. There's so many interviews, there's so many videos, so many dresses, so many outfits she's worn over the years that people are just absolutely baffled by. But it just manages to make a mark, and you never forget the kind of wacky character that she is. And she's probably going to keep making more music. Utopia came out, what, 2017? I wouldn't be surprised if she dropped something even this year or next year. So yeah, up until then though, she has 9 studio albums that I want to rank. Yes, I didn't warn you that this was actually going to be a pretty chaotic ranking, and a ranking that absolutely no one out there will agree with. But I didn't want to say that and you click off the video, but maybe you already have. Number 9, Debut, is my least favourite Björk album. Hear me out for a second, please. Hear me out. There are the usual growls and yelps that come through on some of these tracks. Of course, it is her. She is exclusively Mrs. Björk, or Miss Björk, whichever you want to use. But this album is not as interesting to me, to be honest. There are some intriguing and cool melodies like Venus as a Boy, and the fact that on one of the tracks she says the word beautifulist, which I just love and adore, because only Björk would say beautifulist in the way that she does on that track. I think ultimately a lot of these songs kind of sound a bit dated. I think like the dance pop flair that some of them have just feel very 90s, and while that's maybe an unfair thing to say because it literally is an album from the 90s, I think some albums of this era that do have a bit more of a peppy, springy dance, feel good sort of vibe have aged better than what Björk was doing here. It would be different if she put her own spin on it, but I personally don't think she does. I think tracks like Violently Happy just have a really basic beat behind it, and the hook is pretty repetitive too. Not everything on this album, is bad. I think actually overall it's pretty good, but it just does feel like of its time. And I think, to be fair, Björk has sort of tested the waters so many times across her discography that this one feels like the most ordinary. And I would have thought Björk doing an album like this would not be described as ordinary at all. I would have thought Björk, you know, if you told me what this album sounded like, I have a picture in my mind of how Björk would do tracks like this, and it actually just comes off as a bit standard and a bit of a letdown, really. I think Björk could do an album like this again, or even like do a Kate Bush thing and do like, you know, newer versions later on down the line, because Kate Bush did one of her albums where she just re-recorded old songs. I think if Björk today re-recorded some of these songs, I think it would sound a lot better. I think she'd bring something a bit more exciting to the table. But as what it is, it's okay, but it's her worst one, to be honest. At 8, number 8, we have 8, Utopia. Yeah, this one, actually, if you told me before I delved back into her discography to do this video, and you said, where would you put this? I'd have actually put this at the bottom. But it's gone up one place, a little slight jump, which is interesting because I still think it's, once again, not as good as it could have been. But I think actually there's a lot of beauty to this album. I think the production actually is pretty starry and quite exceptional compared to, you know, some other albums that maybe go for a bit more of a you know, a wow factor where the production is so all over the place and experimental. Whereas this one kind of strips it back in a pretty beautiful way. And lyrically, actually, there's some really fantastic moments on this album throughout. I think she was really sharp with her writing here, as well as another album from this same decade, which I'll get to later on. But yeah, I think there was a sharpness to her writing here that got a bit underrated when the album was released. But the only thing is why it's so low. It's just so samey the whole way through. It's 71 minutes. It's one of her longest albums ever, and yet there isn't much variation, which is really odd to say about a Björk album. Because so many of her albums, regardless of how long they are, have so much variety within one album. Even Debut does have more than this. So yeah, that's where it kind of falls short for me. Yeah, maybe the reason why I took so long to make this video was because I wasn't actually looking forward to the response to this video when it drops. Yeah, 7, Vespertine. This is not going to go down well at all. I told you this was a chaotic ranking, but this album, okay, let me start. It's glossy, it's pretty, it's stunning. The vocals are front and center in a way that stuns you because Björk has such an amazing voice. She does so much with her voice that captivates you on It's Not Up To You. Hidden Place, do I even need to tell you anything about that track? That track is an absolute sublime, spellbinding track vocally that sweeps you off your feet immediately when you hear her sing. It's so unique, and of course it would be because it's Björk. And Pagan Poetry, you know, the way the vocals layer upon each other towards the end with the I love him, and then she loves him. It sounds so good. It sounds so good. Yes, there's so much to love about this album. I get it, I know. However, tracks like Cocoon just leave no impression on me, to be honest. It needs to be fuller. The instrumental is just so bare. And Echo a Stain, similar as well. This track is just the epitome of the whole album from start to finish for me, where it just needs to be more daring. It just needs to be more daring, man. There's a run of tracks towards the end, and so many of the tracks blend in together. I think vocally, she offers the same thing on almost every track, to the point where it just starts to become quite repetitive. And once you've heard one song, you're thinking to yourself, well, I've heard the whole album, because so much of it, like I say, vocally, is just her offering the same thing on each one. A track like Unison just really lifts the album for me. It unfortunately comes right at the end, but I think the strings on this track sound wonderful, and then she blends in her voice with the instrumental better on this one than she does for so many of the other ones. I think more of the tracks could have sounded like this. But you know, conceptually, lyrically, there's nothing really wrong with this album at all. I just think musically, I kind of wanted something different by the end of it. Now, speaking of wanting something more daring, we have Medulla next. Medulla. Yeah, this one, my god, man, is kind of insane in terms of what Björk does on this album. Yeah. Shout out Tanya Tagaq too, by the way, because I don't think without her this album would even exist. And if you've done your history, if you've done your research, you would know that Tanya Tagaq has been making music similar to this for quite some time. And personally, I would say Tanya might even do it better than Björk. But the fact that Björk put an album like this together is pretty insane. The way that so many of these tracks are just driven by vocal layering and weird throat singing and weird vocal isms that just basically make up the entire song is in itself one of the most unique things you might ever lay your ears on if you've never heard this album before. But which is pretty crazy to say, because you could say that about most Björk albums, but this one on it in its own right is even unique for her. It's an album I used to really love, but going back to it, I don't know what changed. It just kind of became not as impressive to me as I'd heard it more and more. But it might also be that when you hear other artists doing these kinds of like throat singing things with their voice, there are like, you know, it's its own genre really. You kind of notice the similarities between what Björk was doing and other artists were doing, but it doesn't take away from the fact that what she was doing on this album is pretty daring and incredibly unique. And like I say, the fact that so many of the tracks are just taken up by vocals is impressive, to be honest. It's mental. Now we're in the top 5, okay? This is where we get to the pretty chaotic ranking, because for me, Volta is one of her best and probably potentially the most underrated album in her discography, alongside another one that I'm obviously going to mention soon. But Volta, man, Wanderlust is sensational. That is one of her best tracks ever. I don't want to hear anything else. This track, my friends, is wow. The way she kind of goes off into the weird like drum and bass bangers as well with Declare Independence. Declare independence. Declare independence. It's crazy. Honestly, this track, along many others on this album, have some of her most expressive production to date. And by that I mean there's just so much going on the songs that it's insane that it is probably one of her least liked albums, one of her least accepted albums, one of her least beloved albums. I just think it's Björk at her best. She's daring, she's trying things in terms of production that she hadn't done on other albums, while also staying true to herself and giving us beautiful tracks as well and beautiful vocal performances. I guess I see why people wouldn't have this as high as I might have it, but I also think people just haven't listened to it in a long time, and that's why they don't value it in the same way as her other albums. Vulnicura next at number 4. This was considered her return to form, which by the way is bollocks, because it wasn't her return to form. She was making exceptionally good music for quite some time before this album came out. But one of the things that helped lift this album, I think, was the breakup concept, the heartbreak that lingers throughout this album. You've got some really, really beautiful moments lyrically. Lion Song, the desperation in this track, man, is just something that's going to kill you off. Hearing Björk sing in such a way that makes it feel like she's hanging on to someone, hoping desperately that they will just love her back in the same way that she loves them. Oh my god, you just never want to hear Björk write these kinds of lyrics, but she does it in such a unique way that makes it stand out amongst other albums that might have similar themes and concepts and ideas about relationships and love and heartbreak. But Björk, being Björk, writes the lyrics in such a way that makes her stand out. And of course, backed by the production of the Haxon Cloak, which is pretty crazy, and Arca. Arca, by the way, is out here doing some amazing things in terms of their own individual, you know, music, their own music, and also working with other artists too, because Arca has such a style that makes this album really stand out in her discography, I think. Tracks like Not Get, the laser weird sounds in Mouth Mantra, there are just so many unique moments on this album that stand up on their own. Of course you have Anoni or Anthony, I don't really know how they go. They've gone by 2 different names across their career, maybe even 3 different names, I don't even know. But yeah, of course that pairing is perfect, because we know that these 2 have paired up before and they worked really well together. I think this one is accepted as one of Björk's best at this point, but I think it gets the deserved reputation that it does. I think, you know, most people view this album as a high point in her career, despite being so late in the game. But I still don't necessarily agree with it being an album that was, you know, a step up, because I think, like I say, the albums before, like Volta, I think that was a really good album in its own right as well. I just think this album might stand above other albums for some people because of the lyrical themes, which, like I say, Björk does a remarkable job of wording herself across this whole thing. Which, by the way, as an added side note, is incredibly impressive when you think that this is a singer that doesn't have English as her first language. When you think of that as well, that's actually pretty crazy. So there you go. There you go. Surely not going to surprise anyone with this one. Number 3, Post. Come on, man. Post is just such a good album. It has some of her best songs ever. The instantaneous, attention-grabbing, stomping anthem of Army of Me is just wow. Probably, possibly, let me think actually. You know what? This might be the best opening song of any of her albums. It is just such a statement to begin an album with. Hyper Ballad is such a glorious tune. I was talking about Debut earlier being an album where I felt like tracks that had a bit more of an up-tempo rhythmic dance feel to them could be more impressive. I feel like this track kind of describes what I was hoping Debut would be, and the variation across this album as well. Like I say, so many of her albums are so varied, and you have tracks like this, Headphones, which is nothing like any other track on the album. A beautiful track that's kind of like an ode to just loving music and just having those intimate moments on your own, playing music. It's so beautiful. And then it's Oh So Quiet, which is just probably her most famous song ever. One of her most conventional tracks ever too. Been covered to death, been made as a bloody advert song until the end of time. It's a great track, to be fair, but it's just such a non-conventional track for Björk because of how conventional it is in its own way. Yeah, I think this is the most accepting album of Björk's. I think most people just have such a positive opinion about this one that it would very rarely split fans, and would very rarely be surprising to see in any Björk fans' top 3, top 2, could even be your top 1 album, your top album. I think most people would just go, yeah, fair dues. Yep, that's right. Number 2, this is, like I say, a ranking that most people will be surprised to see, because biophilia, man. I was saying Volta is incredibly underrated, but what the hell? Why do people not value this album in the way that they do? Firstly, I think it's a pretty interesting concept, and one that, for its time, was pretty daring and, you know, made for a unique experience in the world of music, and Björk's music as well. But musically, though, I just think this album has got it all. It's got it all. Crystalline is absolutely stunning in all aspects, and then right at the end you get this mental drum and bass breakbeat breakdown, which I just think is so exciting and fun. You've got the tracks that break up the intense moments like Cosmogony and Sacrifice, which are really stunning and starry and spacey, and are just really lovely on the ears, really. That's about as much as I can say. You've got the erratic nature of Mutual Core. The closing track again is a stunner. There's just so much variety across this whole thing, and I think that's why I gravitate towards this, and my number one pick as well, because I think when Björk does dart around musically, she does something that many artists can't really achieve, and that is she can keep the consistency. You know, it doesn't sound like her albums are all over the place and completely messy. She keeps them engaging, and everything sounds like it's birthed out of the same world, which is what I really like. And a track like Moon as well, holy shit, my friends, I'm just going to say it right now, this would not sound out of place on a bloody Joanna Newsom album. Seriously, like, this is stunning. And I know that Joanna is influenced by Björk herself, but maybe even later on down the years, Björk became influenced by Joanna as well. Yeah, look, I'm not trying to be one of those, I'm so quirky, I have a different ranking to everyone else. No, I genuinely love this album. I think this is fantastic. I think it's her second best album, and I think it's so underappreciated and deserves way more love. Seriously. What an album. But now for number one. Look, at this point you worked out what number one was, and I'm sure you probably don't even dispute it either. This is Björk's best album, in my opinion. And even if you don't think it is her best, I'm sure you at least think it's one of her best. It's truly magnificent. We're talking about variety and production, man. Holy shit. Alarm Call doesn't sound like anything she's really ever done. There's a trip hop vibes across this album as well. God damn, her vocals are stunning on Unravel, Jogger. Yeah, it's just everything she's ever been able to achieve placed into one album, and it's just like the epitome of what Björk is amazing at. Using her vocals as an extra added layer upon the atmosphere in the way that she does, the way she words herself is so unique. The way that she adds the extra layers of instrumentation on the production on tracks like Bachelorette. This is her most epic song ever, my friends. This right here, this shit could be bloody on a James Bond theme tune or some shit. This could be a James Bond theme. Forget Sam Smith, my friends. Why isn't Björk doing it? Why isn't this one of the 007 anthems? Why? The dizzying strangeness of 5 years. It's so odd, but it works so well. Pluto. Look, I'm not trying to be one of those guys, but this Pluto sounds like Death Grips. Like as if Death Grips were there in the 90s and they made a song. This track, my God, I cannot explain this song. I do not know what she was doing with the production here, but this is so ahead of its time. It is one of the most insane sounding songs she's ever made, and even for its time as well. It is incredibly ridiculous, and it's always, to me, when I listen to it, sounds like it was made this year, whatever year it is. It sounds so ahead of its time. Homogenic, man. She was doing some things on this album that she's never done before, and she was doing some things that were just so stellar that it's just ended up becoming the best album of hers over the years for me. I think it's going to be hard to top this one, and I don't think any of her other albums across the 9 albums she's made top it, to be honest. I don't think they do. And that is it. That is the discography ranking. This is Björk's worst to best. In my own opinion, it is my own opinion, I promise you. There will be disagreements. I'm sure you have your own opinions as well. But this is what I think of her discography. She's a fantastic artist. She never really missed, to be honest. There's never really a point in her discography that drops below at least decent, which I think is an amazing achievement. And I'm sure she'll probably keep that up across the albums that she releases in the future as well. Hopefully we get more music, and it's probably going to be one of a kind whenever we do get it as well. So thank you for watching. My throat is hurting now. I'm going to end it there. Tell me your thoughts on my ranking here in the comments. Tell me what your ranking is. If you agree with mine, that would be great. If you disagree, tell me why. If there's anything I said in this video that makes you angry, tell me why. But yeah, thank you as always. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you want more of these videos, please check out my Patreon and consider supporting me. And thank you as always. Subscribe if you haven't already. That would be fantastic. Have a good day, and goodbye.